Tim, it's great to have you in my office
Thank
here.
you, Shelley.
And
Great to
it's
be
great
here.
to serve with you, and we do have a lot in common.
We do.
West Virginia and Virginia are we're one state at one point, so we
That
don't
is
want to
true.
forget
But we don't want to get into the
No.
late unpleasantness.
No,
You also have a degree from University of Virginia, so
I
we
do.
kind of claim you a little bit.
I do. So anyway, what would you say inspired you to public service?
Public service broadly, I mean, I think it was probably my upbringing and my parents' example and the Jesuits who educated me that made me decide I want to help others. But in terms of elected office, I got mad at my city council. So I was a civil rights lawyer in Richmond, practicing for about 10 years. And my city council was very racially divided. Richmond's got some scar tissue and some history. And I just kind of thought, and this is probably the way a lot of people start, like, I think I can do better than this guy. So it was just watching my own local community be divided and naively thinking, 28 years ago now, that I could be a bridge builder. That's what started this all. And it's been an amazing ride. You have a fascinating story. So
Well,
how did you get started in public service?
I have a similar story to your wife.
Yes, yes.
Well, I was raised in politics. My dad was a member of Congress for 12 years, a World War II veteran. And then he was governor of West Virginia for 12 years. And he and my mom were a team. I mean, they did, these were the days when really, they left us at home for weeks at a time to campaign because it wasn't so easy back then. But we really got to enjoy Washington. We also got to enjoy seeing the astronauts first come in for the first time. That was in the 60s and 70s. But most importantly, I think, was just seeing the impact that they both had, and most especially my dad, on individual lives. Big ways, like my dad created, kindergarten back in the day, and he gave teachers raises, and he did a lot of really innovative things. But as I look back on it retrospectively as an adult now, and them being gone, I realize all the things that they did for individuals, whether it's the lights on the baseball field, whether it's helping somebody immigrate into this country and join their family, help somebody adopt, find their son in Vietnam. These are the kinds of stories I get every day out in West Virginia.
People tell you about
and I
your
realize
folks.
that's where my attraction is to public service. It's the big things are wonderful and important and great and all of that. But it's the things that impact the people that you live around in your community, and I could think of my state as my community, are what really compelled me to go to public service. And it's funny you would say your city council, because I was watching my state legislature, because I didn't start until after our children were older and the oldest one out of the nest into college. And I remember looking at the legislature and I thought to myself, well, I can do better than that. So I stuck my toe in the water, and it's been there ever since.
What was the first year you ran for state legislature?
I ran in 1996 for the House of Delegates, and it was perfect because at that point my kids were still in school. I lived 3 minutes from the Capitol. It's 60 days a year. And I loved it. Every day I went down the hill, and in West Virginia, you're either going down the hill or up the hill. Every time I'd go down the hill to the state capitol, I was just excited. And that's the way I feel about it.
Well, you and I, my first race was in 94, yours is in 96, so we're kind of the same generation. I also really like the fact that you talk about both your mom and dad, because it's the elected officer that's really important, but it's a family thing. And,
it is.
And you and I couldn't do this without family support. Everybody knows you're a Republican, no ifs, ands, or buts, but you're also somebody here who is very known for being able to work across the aisle. There's no conflict between those two things. I think sometimes the folks who watch TV about politics think you can't be a proud partisan, but also bipartisan.
Right.
You manage to do both. So what's your philosophy about wanting to reach across the aisle and find bipartisan solutions?
Well, it's interesting because the first 4 years that I was in the state legislature, we have 100 in the House of Delegates. We had 22 Republicans. Now, there's 22 Democrats.
Yeah, wow.
And our state has flipped. So I learned a really early lesson that if I wanted to have an impact, if I wanted to be a part of the conversation, I always reject the notion that on any single issue, it's always going to be no.
Right.
Or it's always going to be yes. And so I was always trying to find my way to be a part and really make an impact. And in my early years, the only way to do that was to work with Democrats.
Right.
And it's funny because they have what we have, splits within their party where they couldn't get their whole party together. So in certain conversations, they really needed us.
Mhm.
And one of the things I really got involved with was the Children's Health Insurance Program. It came through in the late 90s from Congress. And I was like the Republican that got involved in this. And so I always felt like in my heart, there's a lot of issues that impact the people I represent that have no political boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's what we should focus on. And then, of course, being from a small state, it really, I think, makes it a little bit easier because everybody sort of knows everybody, and their parents went to school together or something of that nature.
So relationships matter.
So you're not on the bleachers talking about what political party you're in.
Yeah.
And so that helped me as well. Certainly, I mean, I'm the lead Republican in my state and have been for almost 2 decades now. But I think I'm also known as somebody who wants to get things done. And I realized early on, you want to get things done, you need to find out that consensus point. So what about you in Virginia? Because Virginia's changed too.
Yeah, I think in some ways you and I have had similar experiences going the reverse. So when I was first a nonpartisan elected official as a city councilman and mayor, so that probably built up I know what your party is, but we're nonpartisan elected, let's work together. But then when I got into state government, and when I was governor, I had my other 2 statewide office holders, Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor, were both Republican, and both of my legislative houses were Republican. So as you say, if I wanted to get something done, can we work together? And I had a speaker in particular, Bill Howell, I was very close to, and we disagreed about virtually everything, but not everything. And we realized from talking that, okay, we may disagree about this or that, but we are big on open space preservation. We both think we should ban smoking in restaurants and bars. And every session, it would seem like we would find 1 or 2 things like, this will be the thing that we can do together. So I think necessity is the mother of invention. If you start in politics and you're in the minority, you kind of have to flex the muscle of bipartisanship to get things done. One other thing I'll say is Virginia, we don't register by party. And I don't know, in West Virginia, do you have party registration?
Yes, we do.
So what I have found in Virginia, so everybody technically is an independent, and on primary day you can go in and ask for either ballot. Can't ask for both, but you can ask for either one. And I think that non-party registration has also built in the kind of Virginia ethos, let's work together. So from starting in a nonpartisan post and then being in a state that doesn't have partisan registration, and then having to work with my Republican colleagues in state government to make things happen, it just built up a good discipline to be proud of who you are, but never be afraid to listen to somebody else, find a new idea with them, and then partner with somebody to make things happen.
Along that vein, one of the things that we had was straight ticket voting.
And
this is when the Democrats were prominent in West Virginia for 70, 80 years. I mean, big majorities. And you could just flip the top button or however your voting machine was set up, and you would vote for everybody in the Democrat Party without voting for the individual. And we kept trying as the little band of 22 Republicans, we need to get rid of single shot voting. And of course the Democrats resisted. And then eventually the Democrats came to their senses and realized that this isn't working for them as well. And we got rid of it. And now with the Republicans with these huge majorities, I'm sure there's Republicans sitting in there going, why did we get rid of that? So how can we teach the next generation about bipartisanship? Yeah,
I think it's very, very important. Bipartisanship or public service generally. I worry a little bit from 1994 to now. It's kind of gotten harder to do this job. Fundraising is tougher. The media climate's tougher. Everything you've ever done or said that was stupid, everybody will know about it because of the internet. So I do worry about trying to get young people engaged. But we also have these wonderful opportunities. Your staff, I bet, is just like mine. 2/3 of my staff is under age 35 who have internship programs, bring young people in, try to have them leave as altruistic as when they started, but with some skills. And I think I think civics education and things at the education level. So I talked to a lot of school groups, colleges, touring through Appalachia last week. I talked to the Appalachian School of Law in Grundy and to Emory and Henry College just north of Abingdon. So trying to encourage young people that their voices really matter. but also remind them of many times during history where youth movements, protest against the Vietnam War or other movements, without young people, they wouldn't have succeeded. And so young people not only should do it because out of a sense of duty, but because our history shows that when young people get involved, that they really make a difference. How about you in West Virginia, or even in your own work? How do you encourage them?
I think too, and I would just add on to that because I agree with everything that you've said there and feel strongly the same. When people ask me how do I get involved, I always tell them to get involved. Pick a candidate that you like or a cause that you like and follow, and really care about that particular person as a young person. And also, our campaigns, my campaign, I'm sure yours as well, filled with young people.
Right.
Just it drives enthusiasm. It drives candidates to really hone their message. It makes the grassroots go. You couldn't do it without young people. And so I encourage them to get involved in a campaign, because then they start to get emotionally involved in what's going on. And whether it's, we know folks up here who have gotten involved just because of one issue that really drove them here. And so it could be an issue, it could be a candidate, it could be the party. But I think generally it's just building the passion. And, to look at their local races. I'm sure in Virginia, we have young mayors in our town, and our towns and cities. It's great to see them trying to figure out how to pay for things. And a lot of them are nonpartisan, but eventually if they want to move up, they will choose one or the other. I mean, and we have a lot of independents, but not enough to really drive a political campaign. And then I do a thing with West Virginia girls I call West Virginia Girls Rise Up. It's not so much about bipartisanship or anything. It's really about leadership and confidence and empowerment. Do you want to be an astronaut? Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be president of the United States? So I'm using that as a platform. And I think we need to emphasize the positive. I mean, every generation, by the time you get to be our ages, we go, oh, that younger generation, they just don't care as much.
I have to fight my urge to say that.
Because they said that about us,
Right,
and so I think we have to emphasize the positive, I think.
One thing that I'm really proud of with young people is I've officiated at 22 weddings.
Oh, have you really?
And mostly they're staffers, and mostly staffers who met working for me. Usually when I start a campaign, I get the staff together and say, guys, I've done 22 weddings of staffers, mostly who are marrying each other, people they met on the campaign. So this is a good reason to get involved. You might meet your life partner out here on the campaign trail. Hey, let me ask you this, and this is a hard question, because when I ask you, a million names will come to mind. But if you like one example of statesmanship, as a statesman or woman, who do you think of?
Well, with the recent passing of Orrin Hatch, I'm gonna name Orrin. He obviously longevity of his service. I was lucky enough to serve with him, and you served with him longer than I did.
Was he the longest serving Republican in the history of the United States?
Yes, yes. And if you look at his background, for some time in his youth, he was a steel worker. He was a member of a union. He was raised in very meager circumstances. But he was always sort of, in my view, very respectful of the institution and respectful of everybody else's opinions. A good partisan when he needed to be. But and in his bios, you can read in his obituaries, you can read where he worked with Senator Ted Kennedy quite a bit.
Right.
And he did the Americans with Disabilities Act, really monumental pieces of bipartisan legislation. So I would say what I learned from him and watching him, and I think this goes back to the last question of what we need to teach our young people, is a respect for different ideas. For some reason, it's become easier to disrespect people if they disagree with you, rather than to say with them, we don't agree. I respect your opinion, because you and I both know you might want that person in your tent in the next one. So what about you?
So I have an easy one. So my father-in-law, Linwood, was the first Republican governor of Virginia, my wife's dad. And he just died at age 98 a couple months ago. Lynn was born in Big Stone Gap, Virginia in 1923. So coalfields of Appalachia. Very unusual guy for his time. He absorbed growing up that others in Virginia looked down upon Appalachians, hillbillies, or whatever they call them. And he hated that notion that, because I'm from here, people may look down on me. And because of that, he developed a real passion for racial justice, that African Americans shouldn't be mistreated. So he created the modern Republican Party in Virginia. There was a one-party state, came back from World War II. He was in the Pacific and the submarine, and there was only one party. And he was like, well, wait, I was fighting for democracy, and I'm coming back to a one-party state. So he slowly built the Republican Party, and this was his record. He ran for the legislature in 1955 and lost. He ran for the legislature in 1957 and lost. He was the Republican nominee for governor in 1965, because why would anybody else accept the nomination, and lost. He ran for governor in 1969 and won. And he was the first Republican governor in the modern era. He promptly integrated Virginia public schools and infuriated everybody. So it's a one-term governorship. So his 4 years ends, and he's built the modern Republican Party, but now he's a persona non grata sort of in both parties. The Democrats didn't like him because he busted up their monopoly. The Republicans were mad at him because of school integration. He tried to run for the Senate in 1978, and in a Republican Party, in the party that he built, he finished 3rd out of 4 in the primary.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. So he ran 5 times in his life, and he won once. But when he was governor, he used it for good. And when he died in October, the tributes to him, what a fantastic governor. Everybody that didn't like him when he was governor now had come around to him. So I just think he taught me a lot about trying to stick to principle. And also the win-loss record matters less than when you have the opportunity, what do you do with it? And we really miss him, but he just, what a tremendous influence on me.
So my dad and Linwood were governors
Were they
together.
at the same time?
At the same time. And that reminds me of one thing that my dad taught me on bipartisanship. Heavily Democrat legislature. The Senate president comes in, they're having a special session. Well, my dad wants 3 things.
Yeah.
And he tells the guy, he said, this is what I would do. He'd come in and I'd say, Will, that's great. I want these 3 things. So I'm going to ask for 8.
Yeah.
So beat the hell out of me on 5. Just give me the 3 I want. So, that's how you did it.
Right.
You were willing to kind of work it out. And then maybe the Senate president said, well, but I need this. Okay, I'll give you that.
Right.
And so they have, sounds like they have very similar histories. That's fun.
Very
That's
good
fun.
lessons. Well, we're both pretty lucky, aren't we?
Yeah,
in
we
terms
are.
of
Yeah, we are.
learning from people in our
Right.
families and being able to carry it forward.
Right.
Great.
Good. Thanks.
Mhm.